If you're planning on purchasing a new Toyota Tacoma, stop right now. Toyota's beloved and freshly redesigned Tacoma has been met with a heap of problems, some of which are downright dangerous. This is a devastating blow to the affordable pickup truck buyers, as Tacoma was shaping up to become the best pickup truck of its segment. Today we'll be looking at where it all went south with the Toyota Tacoma, as well as how will Toyota manage to tackle and solve these glaring issues. The power plant has been severely downsized. One of the biggest selling points of the previous generation was, in essence, its simplicity, especially in the powertrain department. Both the 2.7 inline-4 as well as the 3.5 V6 engine were incredibly simple and simply indestructible, and they fit the role of a workhorse truck quite well. This is because neither of these powertrains used forced induction, as they relied on natural aspiration. Well, the all-new Toyota Tacoma, unfortunately, drops that simplicity in favor of a more powerful but also extremely complicated engine. The 2.4-liter turbocharged 4 replaced both the V6 and the old inline-4, and frankly, we don't know what to think of it. Sure, on the one hand, it pushes out between 230 and 280 horsepower, and its turbocharger allows it to be very torquey and very economical, which are all very good characteristics. However, the engine is a real mechanical and electrical nightmare compared to its predecessors. Since the engine is turbocharged, there are a myriad of new issues that could arise due to its increased complexity, which defeats the whole idea of a no-nonsense worker truck. And if that wasn't enough, the Tacoma also comes as a plug-in hybrid from now on, which utilizes the same engine, except for also having an even larger window for failure. Sure, the powertrain is economical, and it makes more than 300 horsepower. However, it's just unnecessary for a vehicle such as the Tacoma. Not to mention that this also makes the truck noticeably heavier, meaning that the performance difference won't be as noticeable. Oh, and it also makes the truck less practical in terms of cargo area and cabin space, making the powertrain even more confusing. Now, we know that downsizing has been quite the trend with car manufacturers as of recently. However, we still expected Toyota to at least offer us a larger powertrain with at least 2 cylinders more, which would have made the truck much smoother. But with all that said and done, we must give out credit where credit is due, and that's the upgraded transmission. The old 6-speed has been regarded as quite unresponsive and inefficient. That's why Toyota decided to fit an all-new 8-speed transmission to the Tacoma, which is said to be a massive improvement over the old box. However, despite their efforts, Tacoma's new gearbox isn't as good as Toyota hoped to be. Dangerous transmission issues. Amongst the most recent recalls concerning the Toyota Tacoma is the problem with its automatic transmission. There have been several reports that indicate that neutral on the Tacoma isn't working from time to time. Owners have noted that, despite shifting into neutral, their truck would continue rolling if the brakes were not applied. And while this might not sound like a catastrophic issue, that couldn't be further from the truth, as countless hazards arise with this problem. First, and by far the most prominent one, is the fact that you could severely damage the transmission when turning it off if your car is moving. This could leave you completely stranded on the side of the road with a completely faulty vehicle. Apart from this, you could be involved in a car accident due to your car moving without any input. Another possibility is that you or someone else could hop into your Tacoma and start it, not knowing about the issue, and the truck would roll out into the street, which could easily turn fatal for you, other drivers, and pedestrians. This is why Toyota announced in late February that they will be recalling over 280,000 vehicles and fixing the transmission issue, as well as quality checking all their current units that are waiting on their first owners. And while this issue isn't complicated, seeing as it is just a software glitch, it's still bad enough for a full-on recall. The worst thing is the fact that this issue is even more prominent on the larger TNGA F-based vehicles, which use the 10-speed automatic transmission instead of the 8-speed, which gives us even more reason to suspect Toyota's general quality control of not just the Tacoma, but their entire lineup. However, credit where credit's due. The 8-speed automatic is a massive improvement in terms of reliability compared to the archaic 6-speed found in the previous generation. However, its software issues prevent it from being a truly great gearbox. The rear axle tends to split. What surprises more than the transmission issue is the fact that there has been a recall concerning the rear axle of the Tacoma. However, what's especially shocking is that this recall consists of the previous generation Tacoma, which has been widely regarded as one of the most solid Toyotas of recent times. You see, the 2022 and 2023 model years of the Tacoma have been recalled back to the factory to be checked and repaired if needed, and there has been a tendency for the rear axle to split when the car is being driven, which is extremely dangerous, as you might imagine. The reason why this happens is because, get this, Toyota didn't properly inspect the welding of the rear axle. As a result, welding debris left on the ends of the rear axle assembly during the making of the car causes retaining nuts to loosen over time. Then, they fall off, leading to part separation from the axle, directly affecting the vehicle's stability and brake performance, which increases the risk of a crash. What's unbelievable is that approximately 381,000 Tacomas made from 2022 to 2023 will be recalled, making this one of the largest recalls of the 2020s from a scale perspective. So with that in mind, you can only imagine how big of an onset of issues they will be facing with the new Tacoma once they start showing. And it's not like they won't, because the new Tacoma uses a much more complex suspension. The previous generation of the Tacoma used a leaf spring setup at the back. Sure, leaf springs are quite rudimentary, and they aren't the most comfortable solution for a suspension setup. However, leaf springs are extremely durable, cheap, and simple. Unfortunately, the new Tacoma decided to drop leaf springs in favor of a 5-link suspension and coil springs. Now, there are benefits from using such a setup, such as better on-road performance, stability, and comfort. However, this comes at the cost of the underpinnings being considerably more fragile than they used to be. This means that, despite its robust appearance, the new Tacoma won't be as no-nonsense and as durable as its predecessor was. Not to mention that maintaining such a suspension will cost exponentially more, which is not something that a tool truck shouldn't be. And while on-road performance might be better, we'd argue that, if such a thing matters to you, a mid-sized body-on-frame pickup truck might not be a vehicle for you. That said, it needs to be noted that the lower trim levels will retain the leaf spring setup, which makes them ideal for off-road and harsh working conditions. We'd just like it more if we could option out leaf springs for the higher trims. Electrical gremlins and software glitches. We're not going to pretend that we don't like Tacoma's new interior. It's fabulous, combining both the cabin's ruggedness while also being considerably better built than the previous model. Not to mention that the added tech adds both an aesthetic as well as a functional new aspect to the interior. Unfortunately, though, despite its looks, the interior hasn't been well regarded by Tacoma owners in terms of the quality of the electronics. Numerous owners have complained that the technology used in the new Tacoma tends to be quite nauseating to use. The biggest criticism is aimed at the infotainment screen. First, it's way too big to be a stuck-on screen, as it lowers the front visibility significantly. Not to mention that it's also very distracting to the driver. And if that wasn't enough, numerous owners and enthusiasts have stated that the screen itself can be a bit glitchy, with noticeable input lag and even screen buffering from time to time. Sure, this isn't a massive issue. However, it is very annoying, especially for a vehicle made in 2024, and which heavily relies on its infotainment screen. But it also needs to be noted that the Tacoma, as a model, is less than a year old. It is expected from a new vehicle that it won't perform optimally and that it'll start showing its issues sooner or later. Thankfully, Toyota has been very responsive to its criticism, and we can expect it to fix its numerous issues with the Tacoma in the 2025 model year.